race, inner life. God looks at the heart and not at the race. So many questions are raised in a time of spiritual emancipation, and always, these questions concern a little bit researched area, the inner life of the individual human being. Because it is clear that the inner life of every human being is different, and we are now trying to find an explanation for this. People lack all knowledge. With a conviction that does not tolerate any contradiction, they go over to the task of shaping the inner. They assume that a certain race of people must have the same feeling, that the inner life is racial. And this view now gives rise to all kinds of questions. The doctrine of race, in which all the theories are based today, is justified only insofar as it sheds light on the outward appearance, the nature, that a certain race must also have certain outward characteristics can be recognized. But never does the race have any influence on the inner feeling of man, which alone is decisive in spiritual relations. And therefore just the most different races have a certain similarity in their sentient life, so it is now assumed that the breed has an influence on the inner life, and this is wrong, because the sentient life, which has its origin in the soul, is formed by each person himself. So in the same race is the same life of the Creator, the different sensory life would have to be put into it. Tribes should be of the same kind. Then every action would be justified and therefore also judged by the race of man. And consequently God would always have prescribed the organization of the inner life of the different men, and men could then not be different from what they were told through the belonging to a particular breed of God himself would be assigned. So a higher development would not be possible, and just as little could people become will be held accountable, but they are not allowed to stay on earth to make themselves equal outwardly through their race, but every man, no matter to which race he belongs, must cultivate his inner life and therefore contribute everything himself to develop himself spiritually higher. All outward appearances of men will only refer to life on earth. Will these racially united men be able to take care of all their peculiarities, no matter whether the inner attitude is for or against God? Only in purely worldly questions is agreement of the thoughts, but in spiritual questions each individual people think differently and the attitudes to God so fundamentally different that never again the affiliation to a certain race can lead to the conclusion that man is forced to think according to his race. And this now puts right a mistaken view that has so far been too little examined. Wrong conclusions have been drawn, even if the outward appearance of men is apparently quite similar. The inner life goes completely isolated. In order to shape it according to divine will, man has to be spiritually occupied. He cannot put his peculiarities into context with his spiritual task. He has to wrestle just like the one of another race. He wants to bring his soul into the state that God is pleased with it and he takes it into his kingdom. Amen.